Hello and welcome to Busy Pro Fast Wellness, and today I have my guest Simon Watt, a fellow Valencian resident and also English teacher. It's wonderful to have you here, Simon. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the pod.
My pleasure, and it's my inaugural podcast journey, I would say. So quite looking forward to it.
Brilliant, yeah, and I'm sure we'll have a good time. So I'd just like to mention something which happened just before Christmas. I bumped into you randomly in a bar, as we used to spend quite a lot of time in the past in the Fabrica Yellow and in bars, but it was a one-off. I hadn't seen you for quite a long time, very rarely these days, but I was flabbergasted to find out that you had run a marathon. I had no idea about this, given your condition and your diagnosis a couple of years ago, which I know you were happy to talk about. That was a great shock for me. So would you like to talk about your journey, if you don't mind?
About 18 months or so ago,
Yeah.
I did a PSA test. So I was getting up in the night to go to the loo and was thinking, it's perhaps just part of getting older. I asked around a few people and people saying, I do that. I get up a couple of times and whatever. And it was partly because I was getting really quite tired from having to get up a couple of times. I thought, I'll go and chat to the doctor about it. And it's I think that was the first time I'd been to the doctor in 5 years.
Right, okay.
And said, look, I'm getting up in the night. I've heard that this could be an indicator of prostate cancer. Anyway, she said, look, you've probably got nothing to worry about, but come in 2 weeks and do the test. But it actually turned out, as you kind of go through this journey, but in doing this, I became a bit of an expert in bladders, bladder capacity, all these good things. And basically, it turned out the reason why I was getting up in the night was that before I went to bed, I was drinking about 1 litre of water.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So strangely, the two things weren't actually related.
Oh.
So, and it was quite lucky because I think if the doctor would have asked me about how, what's your daily routine or something, and I would have said, I tend to go to the gym in the evening.
Okay. Yeah.
And then when I'm at the gym, I used to go quite late, but I always used to take 1.5 litres of water and drink it. So that was what was actually causing me. Unsurprisingly, we kind of digressed a bit. So, so I took the test. They said, right, your PSA is elevated.
Right.
I think at this point, I would have, advised someone rather than sort of diving into the internet, which can be quite scary.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Quite shocking, is, you're probably to find one of the many charities in Macmillan or something where you can go and speak to a counsellor and get a much more kind of balanced view on it.
That's good advice. Yeah.
Initially, when you start to do the research, you're kind of moving between, this could be fatal. I'm on the way out. To, it's one of the best cancers to get. It's got a very good survival rate. And also, when you're stressed, it's quite difficult to process the information. So
absolutely,
there's a definite element of being kind of a bit lost. And maybe you don't want to talk to family members and things because you don't want to alarm them.
Totally. But one of the main messages that you seem to be conveying at the moment is it's important to, once you hit 50, is to maybe have those annual PSA tests, which are very simple. Yeah. I was encouraged as well because I never go to the doctors. I go once a year on average just to have the test. because I hit 50, a few years ago. But otherwise, I'm not somebody who's going to go to the doctor for anything other than really the general overall test and the PSA one every year, because I believe in prevention rather than the cure, which is one of the fundamental messages I try to convey. Keep yourself healthy, eat well, exercise, then, again, make sure you mentally you're fit as well, all these things. That's important. But no, it's really interesting, and it's very good that you're conveying that story. What about your journey from there? Once you'd gone through that to Marathon Man, that's what I'm really interested in at the
Oh, right.
moment.
Okay. Because you do then think, okay, I want to maximize my chances
Hmm.
of beating it. And yeah, you can then put your nervous energies, if you like, into like a bit of a health and fitness program. So, I had a bit of a look at my diet, started eating tons of tomatoes, and obviously living in Valencia, that is the place to be if you're going to have a tomato fetish.
Of course, yeah,
So
yeah. The good old
I probably
tomatillo,
consumed my own body weight in tomatoes because I read that this was something
like one of those super
this was something to
foods.
take
Yeah.
when you had it. So I mean, I would say I was 5 out of 10 healthy before. It was cycled around a bit.
You did the
I
volleyball. I mean,
lived.
I'd always see you in the pub afterwards. We would obviously have several beers, but you had done your bit at the volleyball prior to that, as I recall.
Yes, yeah, that's it. So I think I moved from 80-20, like 80% drinking, 20% sport, to 80-20
Yeah,
with
M-
80%.
much better stats. I'm now down about 90-10, and 90 of that's health, 10 is now drinking, and it used to be the other way around. As you know.
Yeah, that was it. It takes, changing lifelong habits is difficult, especially, you suddenly realize, gosh, I do a lot of socializing, to then move that into meeting people for coffees
Yeah.
and things like that. So it kind of changes. So I then, yeah, generally started going to the gym a bit more, thought, right, I want to give myself some kind of target
Mm,
to kind of get healthy. Now, I have never, at this point, I hadn't even run a 10K.
yeah. Kind of
So
amazing.
I think to some extent, I certainly bit off a lot more than I could chew.
It does seem like an amazing challenge to having not run at all. And when you mentioned that you just run a marathon, and I know what it's like because I've done marathons before, I know how much training you need to put in to do one, and you sort of casually mentioned it. So yeah, I was really, really taken aback.
Yes. Well, I decided, I mean, I think it was New Year's Day. So it's New Year's resolutions 1 year out. So I was with my son. So there's another element to this that we decided to do. We were doing it in memory of my nephew Luke,
Mm,
who was going to do the Valencia Marathon, but unfortunately, wasn't didn't do it. Well, he committed suicide
oh,
uh,
oh, gosh, I'm sorry to hear that.
shortly. Yeah, so it was, and he was coming. It was a few weeks before he was coming out to Valencia to do the marathon.
Oh,
So, so we decided, right, okay, let's, in kind of Luke's honor, if you like, or Luke's memory, should I say, we'll do this. And the benefit was it was a really good way of dealing with the stress of it all.
yeah, yeah.
Um, because I downloaded the Run with How program.
Okay.
And there's something about it where it just says to you, right, today you're going to run 5K. Tomorrow there's no arguing with the app. You can't persuade it. So I think it really was a bit of a godsend for me that when I was running, I was using this time to sort of process what had gone on.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it was quite a process. There was a lot of tears and things
You
when
mean,
I
yeah,
was,
of course, not as you're running the tears, but obviously on the finish line and after that,
no, no, when I was training as
when
well.
you were training as well
Yeah,
for the, yeah,
because
yeah,
it's what I used to kind of do was like lock things away a bit.
yeah,
And then when I was running, I would let all these thoughts come into my mind
right,
about, my nephew and,
yeah,
and my sort of the difficulties that obviously the family was going through. But there was something about maybe the adrenaline that you get from the running.
mm,
It was, I think, I don't want to say healthy, but it was quite a productive way of kind of rationalizing it a bit.
yeah, yeah.
So
Sounds very cathartic, the whole thing,
exactly,
you
yeah, that was
know.
the word I was looking for. I
Okay.
should get a new job, really. So there was this, a drive to get more healthy, the Luke thing, and
Yeah,
also me and Alistair, because obviously he lives in the UK, and it was a nice thing for us to kind of stay in contact
yeah,
regularly because we're both running the same program.
yeah,
And we would like, gosh, how was your 20K? Oh, I'm dead. Because we were kind of on the same program.
mm,
And then he had shin splints for a while, so he couldn't train. I had some because I think I made a slight error that I was initially running on the treadmill. And then when I moved to run on the road,
yeah,
I said to him about 2 months out, look, this is 50-50. I'm struggling and I had to take all the training down. And the
yeah,
thing when your marathon training is, well, the one I was doing, which is basically you're a novice and you just want to get through it, there's very little margin for error
mm,
because it brings you up to like doing the 32K
yeah,
and then you kind of have to do the math. So if you miss a couple of
of
weeks,
course.
it's really difficult to actually sort of get through it because it just really gets you like the residual fitness you need to get over the line. Yeah, the day was incredible.
Yeah, I know
I
it's the
mean,
atmosphere.
yeah, the atmosphere. I don't know. I mean, my memory's not so good nowadays. I mean, I could say it was the best thing I've ever done.
Yeah, no,
Maybe.
that doesn't surprise me. I did London 5 times, and every year that I did it, it was just electric, the atmosphere, and I absolutely adored that kind of vibe that you're having. So I can well understand it. It's just all the people, isn't it? It's the bands as you're going around, the music, the people cheering you on. And if you reciprocate that, and if you suddenly you wave back and you cheer, and just the crowds go wild. So I
Yeah.
understand that entirely. Even that 10K that I did on Sunday, there were 18,000 people doing that race. You know, the
Oh,
guy that came 15th beat Mo Farah's 10K road race. An English guy. He was only 15th. Wow, it's
God.
amazing. With
God.
27 minutes on a 10K, which, yeah,
Well, yeah, the levels.
that level's just out of this world. I mean, it's amazing. Just every decade that goes on, the times improve enormously.
Yeah, I mean, but it was a nice touch. So me and Alistair on our bibs, we had Luke
Yeah. Oh, nice. That's good.
as
Yeah.
but people, you see, what they do is, as you know, they look at your bib
Yeah.
and then they say, yeah, come on, Luke, come on, Luke. So I was able to say, yeah, all these people were
Yeah.
shouting at us, come on, Luke, you can
Yeah.
do it.
Good
Because
memories. Yeah.
in our group, as people know, because we were in the slowest group. So
Yeah.
I think the crowd knows that we need the most support because we're the other people, it's more a question of like, am I going to do like 3 hours or will it be 3 hours five?
Yeah.
But
Come
arguing.
on, you told me you were just over 4 hours, weren't you? So that's still pretty good. You know?
Yes, yeah, but I think people are a bit like, we need to help these people because
Yeah.
they could collapse. They need the extra
Yeah, encouragement. No, I get it. Yeah.
motivation. That running the marathon is like, it's an event that's kind of available to because if someone says, right, I want to climb Everest
Yeah.
or I want to go to the Serengeti, everything now is getting so expensive and difficult.
Yeah, that's
But the
true.
marathon is like this everyman
Yeah.
sort of event that
Yeah,
you
true. Yeah.
can do,
That's a
and
good thought. I'd never thought of it in those terms before. That's very true. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, and
Brilliant.
at the end, I mean, being English or whatever, we're not prone to being overly emotional, but at the end of the race, as people were coming over the finishing line, collapsing, puking up, crying, it was like, wow, this is such good value.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. Brilliant. Thanks very much for that. And that was part one of my interview with Simon Watt. Part two will be out next week, where Simon will reveal his golden tip. Until then, goodbye for now.